All right, now can you hear me? All right, I got an audio issue here, which is, I don't know what's up. All right, can you hear me now? Okay, so as long as you can hear me, then I think we're good to go. For some reason, I have this open in like 3 different windows, and it's kind of obnoxious. So stick with me, please, and hopefully this won't be too bad. Give me 1 second, and what you can do is go ahead and start typing your questions. This review is based, of course, all on what you have for questions. So as long as you keep that going, we'll go until about 5-10 at least, which gives about 30 or so minutes. I'm going to get something to put my computer on, and I'll be back. Hopefully with some questions in the thing over one of those places. All right, can we still hear me? Okay, good. I'm on I think a 5-second delay, which I think overall is coming out to be about a 10-second delay. So just bear with me on that. It's kind of awkward seeing myself in 2 places here. But as soon as you start asking some questions, we can get this show on the road. All right, what can you tell us about the SAQ on the test? Is the first question coming from Sarah. Excellent. Sorry for kind of the awkward silence here for a while. The short answer question will be in much the same format tomorrow as it has been, or as it was the other day. Basically, what I'm asking you to do is, in answering the question, you're going to be identifying and explaining. And really, it's just a test of whether or not you are going to explain and expand upon your answers. You will have some sort of stimulus. It might be a reading, similar to what you had last week. It might also be an image, but I'm leaning more toward a reading because that's what y'all practiced with so far. The SAQ will be 3 parts, pretty straightforward as far as that goes, A, B, and C, and it will be done after your multiple choice. So that's about all I want to give away. Should be a fairly mainstream historical argument. I've been asked to talk about legal codes. What specifically about legal codes would be helpful? Right now, what I would say is that in terms of legal codes, know their role in developing early civilizations. Think about the role of writing, the role of legal codes in a number of ways to unite these civilizations together, these early states, kind of to bring them together to ingrain some of their kind of uniformity across the board. But also think about how they basically codified patriarchal practices. That's one to think about. They also, in involve elements not just of like governmental procedure, but they also have religious elements in it as well, which is seen in Hammurabi's Code. It's a perfect example from this unit, or the Code of Ur-Nammu. Either one of those you'll probably see something from. How much of the multiple choice part is prologue part 1 and part 2? All of it. I don't really know what the breakdown is as far as chapters from the book. The book, it provides you more of the content background for this, and then the test will test your ability to use that content to think historically. So it probably will not be questions straight from the book, although you will see a lot of the stuff that you had in the book referred to on the test. That's probably the best way I can answer that. Keep in mind that the prologue is just a really small portion. Chapters 1 and 2, you probably see more from chapter 2, I would say, I guess, if we had to put an amount on it. Will there be any questions about Zoroastrianism? You bet your life there will be. Zoroastrianism, you certainly need to know that's foundational civilization. Some of the basic concepts that I talked about the other day would be helpful to know. Let's see. How many questions in the multiple choice portion? There are 30 multiple choice questions on the test. So I'm going to make sure to keep it that way. I have a few more that I want to add to it, but I'll remove some others to put it right at 30. I don't want it any longer than that, considering that you have a SAQ afterwards. Omas, could you talk about the outlooks of different civilizations? I'm not really sure what you mean by that. Maybe like religious afterlife outlooks. The big one to know, I would say, would be the difference between the Mesopotamian view of the afterlife and the Egyptian view of the afterlife, and how that was informed by their environmental situations. The Egyptians, with very predictable flooding, saw the gods in one way, and Mesopotamia, with more of kind of a harsh, maybe vengeful environment, see them in quite a different way. I would say the Mesopotamians kind of have a darker outlook on the afterlife than do the Egyptians. All right. Let's see. Would it be helpful to read the documents at the end of each chapter? That I think is helpful, yes. The documents at the end of the chapters, you may see some examples pop up from there on the test. I don't know for sure on this one if any will or how many will. You'll see some reference probably, as you saw in review. But reading those documents and going through those gives you more practice on historical thinking skills and the like. We'll look at more of them kind of in the future. If you want more information on the Indus Valley civilization, which we talked about, that section at the end of chapter 2 is really, really helpful for that. It gives you some not just textual examples, which I gave you in the activity we did in class, but it gives you visual examples of artifacts recovered from the Indus River Valley. I think that's very helpful. There's a few more figurines and cave art, etc. at the end of chapter 1, which I think are very helpful. It goes and talks about Venus figurines. You might see something like that on the test, or about that on the test. The SAQ, how many sentences do you want us doing per question, just a baseline? Well, I always answer these questions with like enough to answer the question. I think solid answers for the first example SAQ we had were 3 to 4 sentences at least. Introduce your claim, cite your evidence, and then explain how that answers the question. Thank you, Aiden, for that question. Let's see. Will there be a DBQ or LEQ? No, I haven't taught you how to do those yet, so that's coming up later on. We're not going to do that right now. We will probably wait a decent amount of time before we jump into the DBQ, although we will be doing some practice DBQ skills fairly soon. The LEQ will probably be the next thing we'll tackle. It's a little bit easier, get your feet wet in writing the essays in a limited amount of time, and then we'll spend some time diving into the DBQ. But I change that up every year. It really just depends how I'm feeling and whether or not I think what we're learning is boring and needs to be spiced up with a little bit of writing. Thank you, Simi, for that question. How much should we study our notes from class? Because I kind of don't know about the, oh my gosh. I did not say that about my neighbors. At least I did not recall saying that, Sarah. But you do need some, I should have read the whole question before I started this. Your notes are the basis for what you're studying. Yes, you should look back over your notes. If you need to go, if there's anything in your notes that does not make sense, that's when you go and you look up that information. You got me on that question. Kudos. Should we study parts of the book with the blue border? Stories and examples, that's kind of what I was talking about. I know I'm behind y'all on these questions, but I think they're good extra help, good practice. The question becoming about the book and lectures in class. Yes, I would say so. Yeah, they will be. Trends and that you see will be mainly from the lectures. I mean, that's what the key concepts are. It looks at the development of these civilizations, how they interact with each other, the movement of peoples around the world. But your book will provide those specific examples, which I'll be drawing from for your test. And that you will be drawing from much later in your essays, especially. Live stream should have more people, Stephen says. Well, there are 31 watching now. That's not bad. That's a full class if we were at school right now. Instead, you were in my humble abode. So, welcome. More questions based on the book or on my lectures. All the questions are based on your ability to think. So think about the content that you've been learning, thinking about the skills or the themes that we've been covering, the trends that we've been covering. And you may see something on there that we haven't talked about in either, hasn't been in the book or in lecture. And then you'll have to think about what you know about other civilizations and apply that to this new or different situation. That is something that is fairly common on the AP exam. Will there be questions on Jared Diamond's The Worst Mistake in Human History? Not so much a question that might look like, what did he say in this? But I would not be surprised if you see some type of excerpt from the wonderful Professor Diamond. I'm seeing a lot of questions about, details or more about trends in history. Mostly trends, I would say. There are, for the most part, going to be questions that are asking you to think more than anything. The test itself, you'll certainly have some reading passages, and you will be asked to kind of read those, try to come up with conclusions about those arguments, perhaps using what you know about history. You might be asked about specific developments. There's probably like one or two maps on the test that you might see. Specific dates, Rachel, you probably don't need to know. Just know people like the Paleolithic era came before the Neolithic era and the like. But I won't ask you about like what date did writing occur or when did the Iron Age begin. You'll need to know most likely the order those things occur, but you'll never get a question from me that just says what year did this occur. I don't want to say never. There are certain dates that I really like in history, but most likely not, because the AP test won't ask that. What are the most important numbers to know for the test? Yeah, that's, I mean, the dates thing, it's, no, generally farming happened 10,000 years ago or started 10,000 years ago, writing about 5,000 years ago or more. Um, but no, no specific numbers. The letters A, B, C, and D are important for the bubble filling. All right. I think I'm caught up to where your guys' questions are. So if you have any more, feel free to shoot. I think I can put a river picture on here. Let me see if that'll work. How much will we need to know about pre-human history? Um, the pre-human, really not a lot. The idea of big history, you may see a reading that you're asked to look at, but you'll most likely be able to determine whatever you need from the source or from the stimulus. Are the questions AP level, and will there be a curve? Yes, they are advanced placement level, I would say. I don't usually throw any softball questions to you. In fact, I might remove a few of those that are on there because I have a few more that I want to add. There will be a curve if a curve exists. Last year I had 2 tests where people made 100s, which was the first 2 tests I've ever had anybody make 100s on. So I'm either getting soft or I'm doing a better job of teaching it, or y'all are just getting smarter. So there were 2 tests last year that did not have a curve. But basically I take the highest grade, bump it up to a 100, and everybody gets that number of points added to the test. Usually what I see is that average on these tests is somewhere between 75 and 80. The first test of the year, probably closer to 80 is what I'd expect. And later on the year, somewhere around 75 is the average score. The river picture will not be on the test. I was just playing around with this thing I'm using to cast. Just seeing what would happen. Will there be a stimulus for most of the questions? Yes. I would say this test probably has the fewest number of stimuli of my tests, but I would expect at least 2/3 of it to have stimuli or some type of stimulus for the questions. Usually for the AP test, you have 1 stimulus, and there'll be somewhere between 2 and 5 questions that might follow. This one, not so much. There are a lot of one-off questions, 1 stimulus for 1 question, but you can expect to see more of those as we go through the year, and these tests shape up and start to look a lot more like the AP exam. What percentage of test grade is the SAQ? About 20%. The grades are put into PowerSchool separately. So the multiple choice test grade will be put into PowerSchool as 1 grade, and they're weighted, and I can explain that in class once you see your grades in PowerSchool. And then the SAQ is put in under those tests and essay categories with a different weight. And the SAQ is about 1/5 if you were to think of them as a total grade. Will the multiple choice be similar to World Civ Final last year in terms of stimulus and questions? A good yes, I would say. Yeah, they're going to be pretty similar, with, I would say, a greater level of difficulty. Well, I wouldn't say that necessarily because this unit there's not a whole lot to it. So, but yeah, you would expect to see kind of a pretty sizable stimulus. Maybe not questions that are specifically like summary questions, but questions that you can use the stimulus to help arrive at your answer. So that would be, that would be something you might see. Do we need to know about specific examples mentioned in the book? I think cattle hayuk you might see on the test. I don't remember if I have cave paintings or anything on it. Um, you will certainly probably need to know examples from the book to answer your SAQ. I think. I'm pretty sure. To be honest, I have to open up the test and look at it again. A really good question about one question per minute. That is something that really depends on individual students and whether or not you find it hard to answer one question per minute. That is what the College Board asks you to do, so that's what we do in my class. It will catch some people on this first test. You will need to move quickly. There will be people who perhaps struggle to finish the test, the last few questions of this test or the next. So keep that in mind. That is an added challenge. You will get an opportunity to do test corrections on anything you don't get to or cover, and that'll be so that you can get your curve for the test. I would say overall that is not something that I am overly concerned with. I think y'all will do fine as far as that goes. This test is pretty straightforward. The content is not quite as deep, so it's a good test to really start with. The reason I test actually the first 5% of the course, many just lump it in with Unit 2 and give 20% of the course test at one time. I like to have you practice this test with a smaller amount of information so that as the year goes on, you have this under your belt. Let's see. You should give half credit back for corrections. No, that's not going to happen. What do test corrections do to our grade? You get the curve, and they're mandatory. Other than that, they don't do a thing. Zach sees that he's been mentioned. Yes, Zach, they summoned you. We have time allotted for multiple choice and time allotted for the SAQ. Yes, so you will have 30 minutes to do the multiple choice, and then I will have you put your pencils down and pick up your pens for the SAQ, and you'll start writing that. And when you're writing that, I'll come around and collect the multiple choice from the ends of your tables. So I will budget that time for you. Looking here, I think I missed a question. You need to know about groups of people like the Jomon people. I don't think I have them a question asked about them on your test, but you can use them as evidence if you need on your short answer questions to prove whatever you need to prove, as long as you explain it fully. What happens if you do not finish the multiple choice or the SAQ? Well, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I expect most people will finish it. It is challenging. I'm not going to lie. That's the idea of this, is to challenge you. We will make sure that you get credit for what you know how to do. But I expect you to do it within time limit. Yeah, you will get more than 13 minutes as long as we come in and get ready to take the test right away. So you can get up to 20 minutes actually if we start right away. Oh, Yusuf, don't do that to me. All right, are we running out of questions, or we want to keep going here? I've answered a lot of questions about the test itself. Not a whole lot of content questions, which is promising for me. I think that means that you are comfortable in the content. So I think that bodes well for the test. Like I said, historically, this has probably been the test with the highest average, maybe outside of the Unit 6 exam, which students tend to do pretty well on, and even the practice test. My students normally do really well on the released exams from AP. So I think last year we had over 80% was the average on the practice exam at the end of the year. So, of course, that can't be quite as nitpicky because it is covering all time periods. All right. Well, I will kind of, if anybody has any more questions, I will answer them. I plan on being here for about 5 more minutes, so if you need to know. Oh, good question from Chase here. Will there be a lot of questions about social hierarchy? Yeah, I think so. That's something you're going to need to know, especially the causes for the development of different social hierarchies, perhaps what they might have looked like in certain civilizations. You certainly will have some questions about technology. That's a good guess. Specific technologies, what technologies are made of, how those technologies impacted the development of agriculture, thinking about bronze and iron and how that impacted food surpluses, etc. Oh, good, Yusuf. I'm glad you're asking what the actual question is going to be. I will not divulge that. Though it will probably ask you to do 3 things and to explain. Strategies for time management. Really good question. So for time management, what you want to do is make sure as you read through the test that you're not spending too much time marking up the test booklet. You can write in the test booklet as much as you want, but you won't be allowed to use any highlighters, so that won't slow you down. Even though we spend time in class annotating documents, when you're going through the exam itself to answer multiple choice questions, that takes time. So you want to avoid that. You want to avoid back reading. So what I encourage students to do is take a quick look at what the sources are from. Is it a primary source, a secondary source, or where is it coming from? And then read the questions. Just scan the questions and see what you're reading for. And then go and read the source 1 time and know what you're reading for. Because if you end up having to go back and read each source 2 or 3 times, that's where people lose time in this test. Back reading is what gets people the most, I would say, when they take the exam. So reading the questions before you actually read especially longer texts. If it's a map or something, it's not quite as time consuming. But especially for longer texts, you want to know what you're reading for. And that'll save you the most time, I think. Also for the SAQ, don't spend a whole lot of time marking it up, annotating it. Quickly plan out your answer and then get to writing. The exam itself, or writing on the exam itself, of course, on the SAQs, it's a draft. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be perfectly worded. It's not going to be free of all errors. They should try your best to make it free from all errors and capitalize, etc. But you want to spend more time, make sure your ideas are there and that you're answering the question. And then with any remaining time, going back through and polishing it. Let's see. How much of this stuff was also covered in World Civ? We covered it all in World Civ. Well, not all of it, but we covered a decent amount of the basic ideas that come with farming, leading to surpluses, leading to changes in our political structures, economic structures, and cultural structures. We didn't look quite so much at the very specific examples. We kind of jumped into the classical age in order to do that. So I would say World Civ will certainly help you in this course. I mean, that's kind of how we have it set up. Me and Mr. Guilford try to push you 9th grade years so that this year is a little bit easier overall with the course as a whole. But it is probably not going to be as surface level as our assessments were last year. Are we allowed to have reading cards to prevent back reading? Sure. I would say use your hand or use, another page of the test for it. I don't think they're allowed in the AP exam, so you may not want to get used to that. But you can use the test itself to help with that. Do we have to know how different types of societies interact with each other? I would know examples of that if you needed to talk about the spread of ideas, the spread of language, trade between Egypt and Nubia, or Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley. Within societies, understand the patriarchal structures that governed interactions. So know some examples of those, I would say. We need to know the locations of early civilizations. Yes, that's why I had you complete a map. Go to Freeman PDF if you want to look at that map that is complete. Stephen, reading cards refer to like a note card or something that you can cover up the reading as you go. It's a really good strategy for reading in a textbook to keep you from back reading information. You just keep sliding it down the page to keep yourself on track. And so some people like to do that just to make sure they don't back read. It's really good for textbook reading. On the test, it may not be quite as helpful. The readings are shorter anyway, so hopefully there won't be a whole lot of back reading. Cool thumbnail used last year. I don't know. This whole YouTube thing is a mess today. I'm not even sure how I got it to broadcast. I just downloaded an application. I'd prefer to use Hangouts on air. And I have this thing here. It's like it says Wirecast. I had to download this. So who knows what happened. What's the lowest score anyone's ever gotten on your tests uncurved? Ooh, that's a dark question. Probably like in the 40s, but only because of a combination of like not reading and studying and not finishing the test. I would say if they had finished the test, they probably would have easily been in the 50s. I don't know if I've had anything less than a 40. Maybe I have. I don't remember. That's a tough question. It's dark. Let's just say no one's ever failed a test and that you'll pass. That's not true, but you need to know exactly where the civilizations were, just the general areas. You need to know, especially where the river valley civilizations were. You need to know the rivers they're located on. You will want to be able to recognize them on a map, and you will need to know that where specifically the Meso and South American foundational civilizations are in the Andean region and in modern day Mexico. I was told that the one-pagers, Freeman PDF, FREEMAN-PEDIA.com. It's also linked in the test study PowerPoint that we went over in class. That is linked in the PLP. I do use clickbaity titles. I was told last year it would get more people to watch, and so I did. Is there another review session from last year you can watch? Not for Unit 1. Time period 1, we did not do these. I think we started maybe in time period 3 or for the midterm, and from there they kind of took off and we started doing them every time. It prevented me from having to wake up early and students have to come or stay at school late. So, but there won't be one for Unit 1 last year. We just did like a 10-minute question and answer session over lunch. We would not be doing that this year because some people take the test before lunch and some after, so it would not be fair. How much do the one-page reviews help for the different key concepts? I think if there's anything on a one-pager from Freeman PDF that you do not know, then you need to go and find some examples from that, or look at his website or AP Worldopedia, which will also have examples of everything in the one-pagers. Basically, it's straight from the key concepts. So if it's on there, you have to know it for the AP exam. And those are extremely helpful. If there's anything on those you do not know, that's what you need to study, right? Don't spend your time studying stuff you already know. Hardest part of the test, information based. I don't know. It varies every year. I get different reports from students every year. Sometimes it's the time. Sometimes it's the amount of reading on the test. Sometimes it's just not being used to these style questions. So in terms of the hardest part of the test, it's really student dependent. It depends on what you studied and what you read and how you took notes. And that'll adjust as the year goes on. I'll take a few more questions. Stuff you need to know that's not on the web pages. Yeah, anything that was in your notes or from the book. So, all right, cough, the SAQ, cough. It's a hint for something, I don't know. Yeah, the SAQ. I don't remember what's on it, to be honest. I can't remember what source I chose. Though I have like 2 or 3 of them, so I haven't run it off yet. So one of them I think is a Jared Diamond source. So there's a hint for you. One of them is a visual source, but I'll decide tomorrow. Maybe each class will get a different one. Style questions similar to the ones in the focus areas. A few will be, yes. There are a few kind of one-off questions. There are some with stimuli, but I would say the questions for the focus areas are more just to check for reading. So in general, they are easier. They're less bound up with like historical thinking skills. So they're less critical thinking questions and more did you read questions. The ones on the test should have you thinking critically. Sometimes you'll get a new reading or something on the test, so hopefully you actually learn something from these as well as you take the test. That would be my goal, is if the test taught you something. How much studying the other books you recommended help? I don't know what other books I recommended, so you have to be more clear on that. I've still not updated PowerSchool because I went home Friday and was sick with a cold. So I'm overcoming that. All right, I think that's it. If you have any other questions, here comes one. Yes, definitely. That's it. That's the moral of the story. Multiple choice questions are certainly more about critical thinking than memorization. That's the name of the game in AP. You memorized enough last year, so that's it. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying, Sarah. Barron's book. Those books are fine for reviewing for tests like this. You may want to wait and use those for the end of course review that we come to at the end of the year. They're not bad to use as you go, but they come in much more handy. They come in handy closer to the end of the year. All right, well, no more questions. I'm calling it quits. I'm going to turn this thing off if I can figure out how. I hope that all of you enjoyed this review session. Sorry for the late start. And other than that, email me if you had a question I didn't get to, and I will do my best to get back to you. Or you can check in with me in the morning. I have first period planning and second period in seminar. Other than that, get some good sleep tonight, and I'll see you tomorrow.